Underrated in some places, yet prized in Argentina and Uruguay. What's not to love about a well-marbled plate short rib cut across the bones and about an inch and a half thick? Nothing beats this cut over wood or charcoal, but today I'll show you how to make great tasting asado-style beef short ribs on a gas grill. So let's get started. First, you'll need beef short ribs from the plate, flank and cut in 3-bone sections and at least 1.5 inches thick to ensure that it can stand on the bones. You usually won't find short ribs cut this thick sitting in the display case unless you're at an Argentinian butcher shop like Pampita Meat Shop in Jersey City, New Jersey. My friend Martin was kind enough to let me film him cutting the plate so you can better understand this traditional crosscut style, or as they call it, tira de asado. Once I bring my flank and cut short ribs home, I look through the pieces and trim any excess fat that's too thick or likely won't render well. Nothing too crazy, just a little. Leaving all the fat on is entirely up to you. One thing I will say, you should never remove the membrane from the bones when cooking this style of short ribs because it helps protect the meat and keeps the bones together. However, if it is this thick, I like to trim some of it off so it is closer to the same thickness. This helps ensure the ribs cook more evenly and are ready to come off the grill at around the same time. Because this cut has so much flavor, it's traditionally seasoned with just coarse salt right before hitting the grill and often slow cooked for hours. Since we're doing these on a gas grill and they won't be cooking for hours, I like to dry brine mine overnight using Diamond Crystal kosher salt because it's easier to control and helps avoid oversalting, while giving the salt time to slowly work its way in. I season all 3 meaty sides generously and lay them on a wire rack. You can also stand the short ribs on the bones over the rack. Just make sure air can circulate all around the meat. Once you have your short ribs salted, you can now place them in the refrigerator overnight and let the dry brine work its magic. This is just a general guide for dry brining beef short ribs, but in my experience, I've always gotten my best results somewhere around the 24-hour mark. To cook beef short ribs on a gas grill, I recommend elevating them to help minimize flare-ups caused by all that intermuscular fat rendering down. But since many gas grills tend to run hotter in the back, I get better results by positioning the ribs closer to the middle of the grill for more even cooking. A portable elevated cooking rack also works great for this application and can be placed right in the middle of the grill. Set your grill anywhere between 325 and 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Don't rely solely on the hood thermometer. For the most accurate ambient temperature reading, I recommend using a wired probe thermometer placed right at the grate level where the meat will actually be cooking. This shows how far off the hood temp can be compared to the grate level temp. You want to have a meat thermometer in at least one beef short rib to eliminate guessing and minimizing cooking interruptions. This short rib has a lot of fat because it came from the smaller bone, fattier side of the plate, so I would not use this one as your control piece. Choose one with more meat and less fat. Insert a wired probe into the center of the meatiest part of the short rib. The same applies to a wireless probe if you prefer to avoid wires everywhere. Now that the temperature at grate level is stable and between 325 and 350 degrees Fahrenheit, we're ready to put the short ribs on the grill. Place your short ribs bone side down on the elevated rack, leaving a little space between each rib. Starting bone side down allows the bone to act as a natural heat shield, helping the ribs cook more evenly while protecting the meat from direct heat. Proper spacing promotes better airflow and allows heat to circulate freely around the ribs. If your elevated rack can be moved, position it to the middle of the grill. Close the hood and let the ribs cook until they reach an internal temperature of 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Never leave your grill unattended when cooking beef short ribs, as the rendering fat can cause flare-ups and potentially lead to a grease fire, even when the ribs are elevated. Always have a safe place ready where you can quickly move the ribs or elevated rack in case of an emergency, or if you need to get them away from the heat until the flare-ups calm down. When your short ribs reach an internal temperature of 150 degrees Fahrenheit, open the hood and rotate the ribs 180 degrees before repositioning them in the middle of the grill. I also like to check the temperature of a few other ribs to make sure they are all close to 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Continue cooking the ribs until they reach an internal temperature of 190 degrees Fahrenheit. If you notice a stall or that the temperature is taking a while to climb between 150 and 170 degrees Fahrenheit, that's completely normal. Just keep cooking and let the ribs work through the stall naturally. Once they reach 190 degrees Fahrenheit, rotate them 180 degrees again. Check a few of the other ribs to ensure they're also close to 190 degrees. At this point, I like to position the ribs on one side to develop additional color and bark until they reach about 195 degrees Fahrenheit. Once your control piece reaches 195 degrees Fahrenheit, begin checking each rib for tenderness. Insert your temperature probe into different thick parts of the meat. If the probe slides in with very little resistance, like going through softened butter, the rib is done and can be removed from the grill. Here is another example of a rib that has reached the perfect level of tenderness. For any ribs that are not yet tender, flip them over and continue cooking. Some ribs may be ready at 195 degrees Fahrenheit, while others may not become tender until they reach 205 degrees Fahrenheit. I would not let the ribs cook past 210 degrees Fahrenheit, as continuing to cook beyond that point can cause the meat to dry out rather than become more tender. The intermuscular fat and connective tissue are what makes this cut of meat so special, and nothing screams barbecue quite like beef short ribs. There is absolutely nothing on this planet that can make these ribs taste any better, except for Rosa's chimichurri. Thank you for watching, and all glory to God.